So with the new HBO Max Harry Potter series, the question arises because this new series is supposed to be book accurate. What about the movies? Are those now set aside as just simple adaptations, or do we still consider them part of the canon? And that's what we're talking about today. This is part of a larger series of what is canon when it comes to Harry Potter. And that's what we're talking about today is, are the movies canon to Harry Potter? So if you haven't watched the other videos, make sure to check it out. The playlist is right here. Just watch it. You don't have to watch anything in any certain order, but we are stacking the order of canon based on what we've talked about before. Because I'm trying to release it in a way that it's like, okay, this is canon. This is mostly canon, if not all canon. This is less canon. This is not canon at all. So we're on the movies. First off, there are 6 rules that we're going to follow. These are rules / guidelines that I have set up for the figuring out what is canon, what is not. So first off, rule number 1 is, was it written by the author? Yes, no. If it was written by the author, then yeah, it's canon. If it's not, or it's not canon. But with Harry Potter, we do have a bit of a weird gray area of, it wasn't written by the author, but the author, helped fix the story or had final say on the screenplay to say, yes, that's good. Yes, that's not good. So most creative decisions are finalized by the author. So it makes it a little bit more complicated on, is it canon because it was written by the author? Yes, if it was written by the author, it is 100% canon. If it wasn't, that's the gray area, because she has said certain things are canon, but also at the same time, they don't work with the other rules. So we're figuring out what my definitive canon is. And I think it's honestly just the definitive canon based on that. All right, rule number 2, does it add to the main story? If it does, awesome. If it takes away from the main story, and that's just kind of like the idea of, certain events countermand events from the main story. So, for example, the time turner is, hey, it's overused in the theme parks and as well as the cursed child. That kind of doesn't add to the story. It just kind of makes the main story weaker, which then kind of begs into question, is it canon or is it not? Rule number 3, does it contradict or change the main story? So this is kind of like a sub rule to rule number 2, is it's like, okay, does it add? Cool. But what it does add, does it actually just completely change what is going on in the story? Like, if in the movies, Voldemort decided, you know what, I don't want to take over the wizarding world. I want to take over France. Okay, that just changes the entire story and the outcome of the story. I don't want to give spoilers of the ideas that we're talking about. Number 4, does it change characters? So that's motivation, personality, regression of, this character had a story arc in the last movie, but in the next movie, it completely resets and he goes through the same story arc, but goes in a completely different direction. It's, why did he regress back to what he was? It would be like in a movie, you have a villain who realizes the error of their ways at the end of the movie, but then in the next movie, they're just like, what do you mean I learned the errors of my ways? I've always been a bad guy. So stuff like that. And that's also just, missing characters that play important parts in the whole role of the story. Rule number 5, does it answer questions that were brought up in the main story? So one of the things that we're hoping will happen with the TV series, because it's going to be so expanded, is that, hey, why don't we expand little bits of the story of, how did Dumbledore come about trying to hide the Sorcerer's Stone? Was it already threatened to be stolen from Nicholas Flamel? So that's when it got put into Gringotts, and then Dumbledore had to send someone to retrieve it? What do we know? That's something that we can expand. It answers a question about, why did Dumbledore have to protect the Sorcerer's Stone? And finally, question number 6, does it break what was previously set up? So rules that were set in the universe, this is how it works. But then in expanded media, hey, I know that's how you said it works, but that's not how it works here. Such as Expelliarmus is literally meant to remove whatever is in the wizard's hand from their hand. But in the movies, it does whatever it wants. Expelliarmus, whoa! Or does whatever it wants, like it does in Chamber of Secrets and so on and so forth. Those are different ideas that we're talking about. Some are major, some are minor, but as a whole, if it breaks a lot of these rules, then you know what? I'd have to say it's not canon. So without further ado, let's jump in. If you like these kind of discussion videos, make sure to like and subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments below on, do you think the movies are canon? So first off, we're going to start with Sorcerer / Philosopher's Stone. Depending on where you are in the world, they have two different names. That is not affected by the canon. That is not going to break the rules of, is it canon, just because, I read Philosopher's Stone, but the Americans are not canon because they say Sorcerer's Stone. It's the same thing. Get over it. I understand you like Philosopher's Stone. Some people like Sorcerer's Stone. It's the same thing. So rule number 1, was it written by the author? The screenplay was not, but it is based off the original book. So it's going to count because, it can't not be canon because the whole main story that it was adapted from is the books. Rule number 2, does it build off the main story? Yeah, it kind of builds upon the imagery of what the book set up. Like, you see Hogwarts for the first time and you're like, wow, that's exactly how I pictured it when I read the books, for the most part. Rule number 3, does it contradict or change anything about the main story? And for the most part, Sorcerers and Philosopher's Stone is a pretty accurate adaptation. Yes, there are a couple changes in the story, but none that are, oh my God, this ruined the story. I can't believe, Hermione grabbed the sword of Gryffindor and stabbed Dumbledore in the head. No, nothing like that. Like, yeah, there are some line changes, and we'll talk about it in the next question about characters, but for the most part, it's the same story. Yeah, Harry doesn't get wrapped in ropes when he comes in. It's just the room gets surrounded by fire. Not a big deal. We don't have the troll scene in the final obstacle course that they have to get through. Not a big deal. It doesn't really take away from the story. So rule number 4, does it change the character's personality? Motivation, does it regress the character? Well, it's the first one, so regression is out. It does change the characters quite a bit, but nothing too drastic. Harry is almost kind of just void of personality. Like, yeah, he's got personality, but not as much as he does in the books. But the purpose of that is so when you're watching it, you can put yourself in Harry's shoes as, I don't know anything about this wizarding world. I'm going to join the party and, be confused the whole time. Now, Hermione, on the other hand, just gets everybody's lines in the book, from the book. Nearly headless. How can you be nearly headless? That wasn't her line. In the book, it's Seamus who says that. And then half the lines that Ron has go to Hermione. So Ron kind of loses a lot of his lines to Hermione and just kind of becomes the quip. Like, she needs to sort out her priorities. Like, he's just the comic relief in the background and goes, luckily we didn't panic. So it's just kind of one of those things that it's just, Ron is the quip, and it kind of makes his character look weird when he does have, like, the main point, like in the chess match. And number 5, does it answer the questions brought up throughout the main series? It doesn't really expand the media at all, so we're just not even going to pay attention to that because this is an adaptation of the original books, so it's not going past the original books. It's staying within and kind of simplifying it a little bit. And number 6, does it break what was previously set up? So even though there are some slight changes, it doesn't really break the universe. Like I said, there are little things that really don't affect the story as a whole, as the story is Harry joins the wizarding world. There's a mystery of there's a secret package that Hagrid picked up. Someone is trying to steal it. Who's trying to steal it? What is in the package? Would that help us figure out who's trying to steal it? And then getting to the end and finding out, oh, it wasn't Snape who tried to steal it. It was Quirrell. And that's the whole idea. Harry Potter is a mystery novel, first and foremost, which a lot of people, I don't think, realize that it's just a mystery novel that takes place in a magical universe. Because the whole concept of the story is, yeah, there's a kid going to school. They're trying to solve the mystery of who's trying to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. But we don't know what the Sorcerer's Stone is. So final decision on it is, yeah, it's canon because it's really just a very simple adaptation from book to movie, simplified to be able to fit into a 2-hour runtime. Because, of course, when it's read, it's an 8-hour book. You gotta cut some stuff to get it down to 2 hours. Certain characters such as Peeves, who, yeah, he's more important later on, but isn't important really at all. So it's understandable that he's cut out. He's the comic relief. So for Chamber of Secrets, it's basically copy and paste of what we just said for Sorcerer's Stone. Yes, it's based off the original books. It builds upon the imagery of what is set up in the books. The main story and the ending really just stay the same. There's nothing too drastic. It kind of defocuses a little bit on the mystery, just more on being in the wizarding world. But at the end of the day, it's still a mystery of who done it. In the books, your culprits are Percy, Hagrid, not Ginny, Malfoy, and it turns out to be the twist is it was Ginny the whole time. And if you read the books, there are many clues of, oh, Ginny was walking around Hagrid's hut. Now Hagrid's complaining about the roosters being killed. Huh, the first attack happened. Ginny's seeming a little weird. All right. And the character choices for Harry, Ron, and Hermione are still very much the same. As Harry has a personality more than he did in the first one, but still not as much as he has in the books. Hermione has everybody's lines because she's talking about half-bloods and mudbloods and You know, where in the books, Ron is the one who explains it because Ron grew up in the wizarding world. Hermione didn't. Number 5, it doesn't really expand the media, so we're not going to worry about it. Number 6, the events kind of happen the same way they do in the book. So final decision is, yeah, it's canon. It's literally just a simplified version of the main story. So like I said, copy and paste from 1 to 2. Number 3 is where it starts to get different. We're talking about Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah, it's based off the original book. It expands the imagery. That's all the same. The main story and the ending stay the same. Buckbeak and Sirius fly off into the ether, never to be seen again, or at least the book. Snape has a crash out. Not as big of a crash out as he has in the book, but he still has a crash out. Then we get into characters. The characters do change a little bit because in this, we don't learn anything about the Marauders. So understanding that James, Sirius, Lupin, and Pettigrew were the ones who made the map, like we get a quick glimpse of that, like the map never lies. But other than that, we don't get the Marauder story. We don't find out that James was an animagus. I think they might say it in a passing line, but still, it's not one of those things that it goes into the detail of, hey, they became animagus because I turned into a werewolf. And, werewolves usually don't attack animals. They're more likely to attack humans. So I was able to just hang out with my friends and have a clearer head because, I understand these people. Also, the fact that Crookshanks doesn't trust Scabbers, doesn't trust Sirius at first because he can tell that they're not normal animals. Really doesn't go into that deep detail of, the whole mystery of the thing. Because, of course, in the books, it's a mystery. It's like, okay, Sirius Black's trying to get Harry. Who's letting Sirius Black into the castle? How is he getting in? Lupin is a suspect. And then, of course, he comes in, and the twist is oh, no, Lupin's just a werewolf. That was his secret. We also lose a lot of the whole storyline of Hermione doing so much research to help Hagrid get Buckbeak from being sentenced to death, which doesn't seem important at first. But for the later storylines throughout the books of Spew and all that, is she's already being radicalized by reading about, oh, look at all these magical creatures that are just, oh, they're dangerous. We should kill them. So then we get to the House Elf storyline in the next book, and she's already seen how the Wizarding World treats magical creatures. And those are magical creatures, in the most part, that don't have true sentience. But then she sees how they're treating magical creatures who are basically humanoid. And she's like, this is wrong. And everybody's like, nah, it's normal. We don't mind it. And it's like, I do understand. We probably should cut out the whole idea about, the Wizarding World is okay with slavery. But also at the same time, maybe we should keep the storyline in that slavery is bad and we shouldn't allow it. But all in all, my final decision is really, this is canon. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that is left out, which then in the later stories does kind of affect how the story goes, because, if we're taking out this storyline, then it doesn't make sense in this storyline. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, but you got to get to this point. And because you took out all of this point kind of seems really weird to get to. It's kind of the whole idea that, in Game of Thrones, they made so many changes that by the end of it, it was like, oh, crap. That was important. And if you've gotten this far in the video, thank you for watching. And I hope you continue to watch this video from this point. But I just wanted to tell you, if you want to support me more than just liking and subscribing and watching my videos, I do have memberships and merch. With the memberships, they start from $1 and move up above that, which the perk you get for even the $1 all the way up is you get to watch my Tuesday videos early. I will put them up at least 24 hours ahead of time. And if I do have any bonus videos that I add throughout the week that aren't news videos, yeah, you'll get those 24 hours early as well. If you want to support me monetarily, but also, want something from it that isn't just digital stuff that you can't wear around or anything, I do have merch as well. I will be coming out with more merch as time goes on, but for right now, I have my hoodie. I like my hoodie. It is comfortable. I will tell you that it is very comfortable. It's slightly thick, so it's not great for warm weather, but it's great for 60 degrees. So if you want to support me monetarily, but want something physical, go check out my merch. I've got a couple shirts so far, a couple jackets, a mug. I tried to keep the price as low as possible, but make at least a couple dollars off of it. I'm gonna be transparent with that. I tried to make it as cheap as possible because if I want to buy it, I don't want to buy it at like $60. So I get it. So if you see something you like, make sure to get it. But without further ado, let's get back to the video. All right, so now we're on the Goblet of Fire, and I'm just gonna let you know the first 3 rules. Did the author write it? Does it add to the story? Does it change the story? Are pretty much going to be the same the entire time. Is yes, the author wrote it. Yes, it builds upon the imagery of what the book set up. And 3, it doesn't change the main story or the ending. Like all of the stories, like from point A to point B, are the same. Yeah, they took a different route to get to that point, but at the end of the day, the good guys win. But this is where we start to get into kind of a lot of the issues. Is there are a lot of characters missing in this. 3 characters specifically who are, I think, important for the book. We have Ludo Bagman, who is part of the plot. Yeah, he's not really important to the story, but to the mystery plot of the story, he's one of the suspects. Because Ludo Bagman was once tried as a Death Eater. He seems to be wanting to help Harry throughout the story. Oh, he's just a gambling addict. So we kind of start to lose the whole mystery of the whole thing. Yeah, we still have Karkaroff that we can use as the red herring. But the more red herrings you have, the more fun the twist is at the end. Because there's always a twist at the end. He also kind of teaches us lessons that come back in later books is, you know, the Department of Mysteries with Rookwood, because he was passing information on to Rookwood, who was, you know, worked for the Department of Mysteries and was promising Ludo Bagman a chance to join the ministry, because Ludo Bagman was like, I can't be getting hit by bludgers the rest of my life. But he also teaches us a lesson of never deal with goblins, which doesn't seem like a very important lesson in Goblet of Fire. But when you get to the end, when Harry, Hermione, and Ron are working with goblins, and then the Griphook betrays them because they were going to betray goblins, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, listen, you learned you don't cross goblins. One of the biggest missing characters is Winky and Dobby, because you got to put them together. Winky and Dobby are very important characters for kind of the whole story. Dobby more than Winky, but Winky kind of brings Dobby back into the story, because Winky is the one who starts out Spew, and then we get to the kitchens, and then we get reintroduced to Dobby, who has a lot of major plot devices that he is used in for other books. So we don't get Spew, and then we don't get introduced to the house elves in the kitchens, and so then we don't get introduced to Dobby, which Dobby not being a part of the story kind of changes the story. And yeah, it's something easily fixable, and it was already built into the story. Neville Longbottom. So Neville Longbottom is given a book by Moody, The Magical Plants of the Mediterranean, or in the movie, Magical Plants of the Highland Lochs. But there's a reason that the titles had to change, because without Dobby, Dobby steals the gillyweed from Snape's stores. Neville is not going to steal the gillyweed from Snape's stores. If gillyweed is in the Highland Lochs, where is Hogwarts? In the Highlands, on a loch, which means gillyweed is on the shore of Hogwarts. So you can easily grab gillyweed and say, here, eat this. It'll allow you to breathe underwater. Problem solved. The book was there the whole time. Just had to change the title of it because it's got to be easily accessible and makes sense that Neville is able to just grab gillyweed that easily. So those are some of the major changes, but that also changes, you know, why Snape is suspicious that Harry has been stealing from his potion stores, because of course Snape sees, oh, you had gillyweed. My gillyweed was missing. You stole it from me, but you're also stealing other potion supplies, like Polyjuice Potion. I don't know what you need that Polyjuice Potion for, but why are you stealing it from me? Snape's also already probably suspicious that Harry stole the Polyjuice Potion supplies from second year. Kind of alludes to that in the books, but it's still kind of one of those things that, why is Snape suspicious? Oh, because Snape knows that the gillyweed was used by Harry, which was stolen from his stores. Not really important to the whole story, but answers questions later. Number 5 is going to be the same. It doesn't really expand or take away from the media itself because it is based off of the book and it's an adaptation. But 6, there are a lot of changes to the main story that do affect it later on. And it's starting to change the overarching story because of the missing storylines. Because now you're having to give whole parts to other characters because certain characters just don't exist. And since they don't exist, you cannot give them that part. And it would be weird to reintroduce them now. And that happens more as the story goes on. So I am going to deem this partially canon. Like, the idea of the story is canon. It doesn't really break any rules. Like, gillyweed still works the same way. And yeah, there's a little joke. It's like, oh, there's kind of a debate on whether it works well in fresh water compared to salt water. But at the end of the day, it still works about an hour. So, you know, most of the rules are not broken. We can get into the Triwizard Cup being a port key, but it's the same as in the books as it is in the movies. So we don't need to get into how does that work. Now let's move on to Order of the Phoenix. Like I said, the first 3 are going to be the same. So, you know, C4, C3, C2, C1. Because of the lack of Dobby, it changes a lot of things in this. Because we didn't have Dobby in the 4th one. So why would Dobby be in Hogwarts? Which of course means that because of the lack of Dobby, it changes a lot of what goes on in the story, of how it comes about. Let's more be specific with that. But hey, it worked in the last movie to give Neville Dobby's part, so let's just do it again. So instead of Dobby helping Harry find the room of requirements, Neville can do it. And then we have the weird thing with Cho Chang. So hey, we don't want to go through the whole part of, oh, she's sad and Harry, doesn't really want to deal with it. But we also lose the whole Quibbler, Harry interview, which allows the Wizarding World to find out and kind of question the Ministry. That's gone. But instead of Marietta Edgecombe going to Umbridge unsolicited and saying, hey, look, there's this secret organization, now all of a sudden Cho Chang is being Veritas and forced to give the information, which then causes them to break up, rather than, Cho Chang going, it was kind of a mean thing for Hermione to do to make Marietta have pimples that say sneak on her face. And Harry goes, well, it was kind of a crappy thing to do for your friend to go rat us out and almost get all of us expelled. So, we're even. But the problem with the Veritaserum is in the books, Snape doesn't give real Veritaserum. So if you know that fact is that Snape gave Umbridge fake Veritaserum, then it's like, okay, so Cho Chang wasn't actually Veritas and then decided to just rat out her boyfriend? Kind of weird. So it just makes some of the scenes a little bit weird, but also at the same time doesn't really affect the story as a whole. But one of the things that does affect is the fact that, once again, we do not have Dobby, which means our relationship with Dobby throughout the books isn't there. So it's less special when he shows up and saves our lives and then dies. Once again, rule number 5, it doesn't really expand on the media, so it's not something we have to worry about. Now, some of the bigger things that are broken are, Ginny is just more in the background and doesn't even get to play Quidditch because there's no Quidditch in this, so Harry doesn't get banned, so Ginny doesn't take the place. So then in the next book, it's weird that Ginny's a part of the team already. Or Ron, but Ron wasn't a part of the team, he's auditioning now. But Ron's not part of the team, he's trying out this time. But Ginny was already a part of the team. Then we also get the fact that there was no spew introduced in movie 4, so now we don't have the whole idea of, hey, Sirius, maybe you shouldn't treat Creature like crap, and then hopefully he won't betray you. Oh, he betrayed you. Okay. Because you treated him badly. Also, this does affect later on in the story in the expanded media, such as the Universal Rides and Cursed Child, but we don't see the destruction of the time room in the Department of Mysteries, which is a major point to basically be like, hey, look, there's no more time turners, no time travel, no more plot holes of saying, oh, they could have gone back in time and changed time. They couldn't, but still, no time turners. Problem solved. So once again, in this, I am going to deem it partially canon. Like, the main idea of the story is canon. Like, magic happens. They go to the Department of Mysteries. There is a prophecy. We do hear the prophecy. The prophecy is what is the most important part of this whole story. But we lose a lot of stuff that is important for the later part, like the locket. The introduction of the locket happens in the 5th book. We don't realize it, but it's an important thing. So it's just a couple little things that are left out that weren't told that they were important because we had to keep it a secret for, the end, but that information was already out when this book came out, of the locket being a Horcrux. So final decision, partially canon, like it's an adaptation, but it's changed so much. Smaller details about the rules of the universe are starting to be gray and start to become not canon. And finally, we're on Half-Blood Prince. This is where the just books and movies go in 2 different directions. Yeah, they meet up at the end, but this is the biggest detour that changes so much of what happens from this point on that this is a different media at this point. It's the same idea of the story, but it's a different journey we're going on. So like I said in the last movie, Ginny kind of doesn't really have much of a personality. In this one, she's just Harry's love interest. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, whoa, pump the brakes. Why is Harry in love with Ginny all of a sudden? Because like in the books, we kind of build upon it from, book 4, book 3 even, where it's like Ginny's hanging out with Harry, Ron, and Hermione because she doesn't really have a lot of friends. Then book 4, she's hanging out with them more. They spend the whole summer together, and it just keeps building upon there. And now all of a sudden it's just like, oh, pop up, Ginny, hello, you in love with me? It's a mess. It doesn't really expand the media, so, it's still an adaptation. But here's where we get a lot of the problems. We get a lack of background for Voldemort and where these Horcruxes came from, what he may have made Horcruxes, because we get all the information on here's basically all of the Horcruxes that we think may be Horcruxes. And yeah, it doesn't seem important that maybe we should show off these different Horcruxes, but it makes a big deal in the later movies that we don't know what these Horcruxes are. All we know is that he made 7 of them, 6 of them 7 by mistake. Also, just getting into the added action scenes for no reason, like, okay, why do we need Bellatrix burning down the burrow? That wasn't needed. I didn't need that. And then also, why is Bellatrix even in this movie? Because she's only in the book in the beginning. She's only in the one scene at Spinner's Inn. So why is she showing up at Hogwarts and destroying the castle? So not only did she destroy the burrow, but she destroyed the castle. I assume because she's such an expensive actress that they were like, okay, well, we can't just have her in one scene at the beginning. That would be silly. So we'll have her throughout the movie, which then kind of brings up the whole idea of, okay, well, in The Cursed Child, this may have been the point where she was off somewhere having a child, maybe. There's 2 points in the story, either Harry's 6th year, she was off having a child, or after the Battle of Seven Potters, she went off and had a child, which would have been born around the time that she showed back up to Malfoy Manor. So either way, those are 2 things that could have happened. But it's still partially canon because it is still an adaptation of the story, but there are so many changes that it is going to affect Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, and it kind of breaks how things work. So let's get into Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. There's a lot of characters that are missing that are kind of changed and, get kind of pushed to the background. Specifically, Tonks and Lupin, who were briefly glimpsed in the last movie in Half-Blood Prince. And so we kind of just like gloss over. It's like, oh yeah, no, they're married, and oh no, we don't know if they're pregnant or not. We don't know if they had a child. It is never confirmed that if the movie Tonks and Lupin had a child. Then we also still kind of get Bill and Fleur passed off to the side, not as much as Tonks and Lupin, but because Bill didn't show up to Half-Blood during the battle at Hogwarts during that time, we just like, oh yeah, no, he was attacked by that Fenrir Greyback guy, that weird, sweaty, wet guy that I don't think is ever named in Half-Blood Prince, but we name him in the credits as Fenrir Greyback. He's just kind of a wet, sweaty guy. And then we also don't get introduced to Ted and Andromeda. Not that they're a big deal, but the idea of Andromeda being related to Bellatrix and Narcissa, it would have actually been kind of a fun idea to have Andromeda played by Helena Bonham Carter, but just be really nice, because that's the thing, is Harry lands, he wakes up, and there's Bellatrix Lestrange standing in front of him, and then he realizes, no, that is not Bellatrix Lestrange. She's slightly different. And then we get introduced to Ted, and they're like, oh no, Nymphadora's our daughter. And then Ted becomes kind of a background plot point of, he runs away because he is a Muggle-born, and then is found dead. And you're supposed to be like, oh, that's sad. So, the whole story of Andromeda basically losing her entire family in about a month or 2. She loses her husband, she loses her daughter, she loses one of her sisters. Yeah, she wasn't close, but, still kind of sucks. And now she's stuck with a baby. I'm sure she's happy with the baby, but, she'd probably rather have the rest of her family. Rule number 5 doesn't count in this, as it has with all the other movies. Here's where all of the changes in the story before, in the movies before, culminate into just kind of messing up how this all works. So first off, Harry doesn't know what any of Voldemort's Horcruxes are. So now in this, he has a magical Horcrux sense. He's like in the room and he's like, I can smell the Horcrux. I think it's over there. Because we also have a different scene in Half-Blood of him hiding the Half-Blood Prince's advanced potion making book. So of course, he doesn't even come across the fact that he had the diadem in his hand. Because of course, if you're going to give him a Horcrux sense in the next movie, you can't have him touch the diadem, because if you have him touch the diadem, then he would have noticed that this is dark magic. And the way that Voldemort dies, in the books, he's just a dead body on the floor that they just leave off to the side. Like they have all of the people who died in the battle, and then Voldemort outside the Great Hall, just kind of there. They covered up with some rubble, I don't want to look at him. But in the movies, he just floats off in ash. And it's just kind of, is he dead? Like, he died so magically. Like, that was the whole point, is, this man was such a powerful wizard that he died a normal human death, basically. But in the movie, it's like, is he actually dead? Because the rule is no body, no crime. And in comic books is if you don't see a body, they're not actually dead. Unless you see them die and you see them bury that body, most likely they're not dead. I mean, comic books breaks that rule all the time. Like, hey, you watched us bury this man. Oh, no, that wasn't him. That was a doppelganger of some sort. So story as a whole is canon. This is a partially canon once again, but I think so many of the compromises that they had to make throughout the book kind of ruins where the book ends. Like, Harry steals Draco's wand, just breaks the Elder Wand. I'm okay with him breaking the Elder Wand, but, why didn't he get his wand back? Why is he using Draco's wand? They're not important, but they make a difference. So I think the story as a whole, from 1 to 8, is canon. Like, it's the same idea. It's basically like reading the cliff notes of the book, but, major details being missing and, all of that. I think it's a partially canon. Like, it's, okay. If you've only watched the movies, yeah, you understand Harry Potter. You understand the basis of good versus evil, and that Harry wins in the end, and he was saved by his mother's love. But you miss out on major characters, major plot points, and motivations that these characters have, which get them from point A to point B. Because there are a lot of people I have met who have watched the movies first and then eventually read the books as adults and are like, this all makes sense now. There was so much left out of Goblet of Fire and Half-Blood Prince, because those are the two that are kind of, break everything. There was so much stuff left out of those. I didn't realize how it all worked. But now that I've read the books, it makes sense. That's a problem. But if you like the movies and don't want to read the books, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you for not wanting to read the books. It's a lot. It's an undertaking, but sometimes it's worth it. If you like just the movies and only want to watch the movies, that's great. Enjoy it. Watch videos like this, which we tell you, hey, look, these are the things that you're missing out on, and then you're good. So that's it for me. That is, are the movies canon to the books? Yeah, for the most part. But anything building off the movies, probably not canon. So without further ado, that's it from me. Stay marvelous and Nox.